Welcome to the Equal Opportunity Committee's 19th meeting of 2013. Can I remind everyone to set all electronic devices to either flight mode or off. Agenda item 1 today is a decision on taking business in private, and we're being asked to decide whether consideration of candidates for the post of advisor and scrutiny of the draft budget should be taken in private. Are we agreed? Thank you, that's agreed. Agenda item 2 is a decision on taking business in private, and we've been asked to decide whether consideration of a request to sponsor an event coinciding with Black History Month and African History Month should be taken in private at a future meeting, and there's a paper on it. Are we agreed? Thank you, that's agreed. Agenda item 3. Oh right, sorry, before we move on to that, in addition, before we move on to agenda item 3, I'm getting ahead of myself. We've received the Scottish Government's response to Where Gypsy Travellers Live report, and I am minded to schedule it for discussion at next week's meeting in private. Do we agree? I think it would be useful to have a discussion around the report that we've had from the response to the report from the Government.
I would want some considerable time put aside to consider that, if that's possible, please.
Are we agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 3 is on correspondence relating to the Equality and Human Rights Commission. We have a paper 1, and we have a couple of options there to either take no further action or invite the EHRC to respond to the issues. I would be minded to invite the EHRC to respond to the issues that are raised.
In writing?
In writing, in person, we could invite them along. It's entirely up to us. We could get them along to give for a one-off evidence session.
I think given current pressures, it might be best to see what they say in writing and then decide after that whether we want to bring them in and cross-examine them.
Do we agree to write to them and ask them for a response to the issues that were raised?
Yes.
Right, so that's our initial response. That's fine. Thank you for that. Agenda item 4 is on gender pay gap information, and again we have a paper, and we have options there to give further consideration to the gender pay gap, further consideration to occupational segregation, or any other action. Christian, sorry.
Sorry, I'm a bit lost because we didn't get an agenda in our papers.
Oh, did you not?
No.
Oh, right, can I get an agenda? Sorry, there's Douglas.
I was looking
rushing round. Sorry.
We can share.
There was one in the electronic one.
There was one in the electronic one, yeah. Right, okay. So there's a paper on the gender pay gap, and you'll see on page 1 under recommendations there are 3 options we can consider. Any thoughts on how we should take it forward? My view is that we should give further consideration to the pay gap, but also look at occupational segregation, because I think it's difficult to separate one from the other. So my personal view would be to look at both of them.
I think we should also fold this into the follow-up we get from the Women in Work report, because clearly they'll be dealing with similar issues, and responses that we get back from that report will interact quite substantially with occupational segregation, and probably in no small part with the gender pay gap as well. So this might be something that we decide to give further consideration to, but at a future date decide exactly what that further consideration is.
Alex?
I agree absolutely in principle with what's been said there, and I think we should take gender pay gap into consideration in relation with that. But I worry that there are still key issues relating to the gender pay gap that we may lose in a bigger discussion. So I think it perhaps has to go both ways. I think gender pay gap should be a specific priority that we look at in the short term, because as we've heard from a number of people who gave witnesses when we're talking about women in work, the gender pay gap is still an absolutely critical consideration to a number of key people in there.
I mean, I would absolutely agree with that, and perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, but did we not agree that we would pick up the gender pay stuff individually on its own?
We agreed to get this briefing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but I think there was a discussion a while ago, and we had talked about looking specifically at the issue of the gender pay gap, because it would be hard to include it as part of a bigger inquiry, because it is such a big issue. So I absolutely agree with what you've said, Alex. I know. Might not happen again. John?
Kavita, can I commend that approach, because I think it is a big issue, and commend the paper we received from Vladislav Mija on that very issue. There's a lot of information there I think will need to be married together, but I think Marco's quite right. That can be informed by the government's response to women at work.
So, do you not want to do it as a separate thing, though?
Oh, no, I am commending that approach, yes. I'm just saying I agree. I think we should wait the government's response, because that will inform along with these papers.
Yes, I mean, it wouldn't be the intention to do anything before we get the government's response on the women in work stuff anyway. But we did have a discussion about looking at it in isolation, because it is such a big issue, and that's why we've got the paper. Any other views?
I'll just maybe have a comment first. Apologies, I was late, convener. I mean, some of the figures in the paper, you know, showing that apparently Glasgow has a negative gender pay gap, I am very suspicious of, but I'm sure we can look at that in due course.
Yes, some of the figures are quite startling.
I have a feeling Alio's a factor in there,
Yes.
but anyway.
Yes. Any other views?
Yeah, I would agree, Colin. I think we would have to take the figures first before we discuss.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we'll wait on the response from the government for the women in work stuff, and give further consideration to this, whether it's a short-term small inquiry, get more evidence. We're nodding. Do we all agree to that? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So we know what we're doing. Excellent. Excellent. That concludes the public part of today's meeting. Our next meeting on Thursday the 20th of June will be held in private, as will include consideration of our forward work programme and our approach to forthcoming legislation on marriage and civil partnerships. And I'm now going to suspend for 5 minutes.